All right, welcome to the lab. This is where we're going to give you some insight into the One to Grow On community and how we operate. For those of you that are already part of the community, thanks for being with us. And this is going to be a little bit of an insight into Module 5. For those that aren't already a part of the community, fear not, fear not. We are talking about Module 5, Fear is a Liar. There will still be good content, actionable guidance for you as well. Now, if you are part of the community, then this is the 5th module. We've already been through our morning kickstart. We've talked about power of forgiveness. We've talked about who's your crew and who are you spending the most time with. We talked about your mission, your vision, your principles. All of these are foundational in tackling living a life filled with courage and not succumbing to fear. And so here we go. Let's talk a little bit about it. For those that aren't part of the community, this is a glimpse into kind of the formula and how we provide a framework for people to tackle different areas in their life in terms of bridging the gap between maybe knowing what to do and actually doing it, or maybe for some of you not knowing what to do and trying to figure out how to navigate life as you get involved with the personal growth and development journey. So a little bit about the program. This is foundational work. This is deeper work than just 30-second life hacks. So we get into these modules, and when you join, you have this environment where you can go into and you get an introductory video, you get the content, kind of the stories and the research in bite-sized pieces. Then we get into a webinar so we can learn a little bit more, go deeper into the topic. And then you get a framework for ideas on where you might take action on these different things that we talk about in the community. We talk everything from the power of a morning kickstart to forgiveness to negotiations, because everything in life is negotiations, influence, mission, vision, principles, talking about how to create great habits and maybe get rid of some that you don't have. It's a personal growth and development journey that has implications into your personal and professional life. It's been developed over 20 years. I've been on this journey for 20 years. I will always be on this journey for my personal experience and also the people I've coached and trained over the years and people that are part of the community. All this kind of helps us all grow and get better. So let's talk a little bit about how we conquer these types of things. This is going to be a short intro video. I want to make sure that I leave you with something of value here, regardless of whether or not you choose to join the community. But the way we tackle it is there's a formula, and the first thing we need to do as we look at these different topics is one is get a baseline. And the baseline is discovered through a series of questions that we ask, and then you kind of reflect and think about where you are. In this case, it would be where you are in the topic of fear. Where are areas in your life that you feel like you experience maybe more fear than you'd like to? Where do you think you can improve with respect to living a more courageous life? Why do you think that's important for you to even take this type of thing on? And then we ask you to kind of project, if you were able to live a more courageous life and one that you limit the fear, or at least move through it, what would that mean for you? What would the implications be? So the first thing we do is we kind of level set, kind of figure out where we are in the process. Okay. And then where we go from there is, you'll hear me say at the end of some of my videos, learn it, live it, love it. And so we do the research, right? Instead of just saying, here's what you ought to do, we say, okay, well, now we're talking about fear, so let's learn a little bit about fear and the origins. And fear has many origins, right? And we talk about all of these. I'm not going to be able to name them all off the top of my head, but you have fear of inadequacy, or maybe you hear now talked about as imposter syndrome. There's fear of failure. There's fear of rejection. There's fear of missing out. There's fear of change. There's fear of getting hurt. All these different fears. And so what we do is we identify the different types of fears, and then we kind of look through and we try to determine what are the antidotes to those different fears, right? So once we start to learn a little bit more about something, we figure, okay, I know where I am and I know a little bit about the topic now. So now what are some things I can do to move through it? Nike says, just do it. Well, that's really good advice, but it's not always that easy, right? We need to maybe do a little bit more work in order to get to that point. So we get to live it, right? And this is where we start identifying the sources of our fear, and then what are the actions that we're going to take, right? So let's take the fear of rejection first and foremost. And this is something that I have some experience in. I have many years in sales and also many years in coaching salespeople through the fear of rejection. And one great example of this is actually during my sales career back in, 06, 07. One of the things that I needed to do was take listings. I was in real estate sales. And I needed to get some listings. And one of the greatest ways to do that is to reach out and talk to listings that have expired off the market that didn't sell. Well, this was a highly competitive activity because that's a really good way to get listings. So not only was it highly competitive, but the people that you were talking to, the sellers whose homes didn't sell, generally not so happy, right? They're already irritated with realtors, their home didn't sell. So not only was it competitive, but it was also you're talking to someone that maybe really didn't want to hear from you, right? So when I started doing it, I was fearful about it. And I used to procrastinate. I come up with excuses. I kind of hem and haw and what am I going to do? And so what I did a couple things. So we look at the antidote to the rejection fear. Okay, one thing that I did was I took the big objective and I broke it down into bite-sized pieces. So I figured out what are my series of steps that I need to do in order to become good at listing expired properties. Okay, and again, this is just one example of how we get through fear of rejection. Excuse me. So one thing would be to break the big picture objective down into small steps. Okay, so now we're not dealing with a big overwhelming thing. Now I may get overwhelmed by the whole thing, but I do know what one easy step I can take to move me in the right direction. That's one thing that I did. The second thing I did was I shifted my mindset. My mindset when I started doing this was they don't want to hear from me. I got to figure out a way to, do this because the person I'm calling doesn't want to hear from me. And therefore, do I really want to call them? Because do I want to get this type of call? Well, I was thinking about it the wrong way. The mindset became, it went from they don't want to hear from me to they need to hear from me because I'm going to put them in a better position to succeed. And I truly believe that, right? I started doing some internal work on the value I brought to people. I was turning into a good realtor at the time. And so I brought value and my company brought a tremendous amount of value, a lot of horsepower behind me. And so I really started thinking through what are the advantages? What's the value that I bring to the table? What's the value that my company brings to the table? And then when I sat down to make those calls or when I showed up to knock on the door, knock on the door, I was more confident in the value that I brought. So therefore my mindset was they may not know it, but they need to hear from me. It was almost like an obligation. Like I need to save them from, maybe someone that wouldn't take as good care, or didn't, care as much or had the skills. So I shifted the mindset. And then this is the key to any fear is you move into it. You take the action. Now, remember, Nike said, just do it. That's one way to approach this. It's just not always reasonable. But if I break it down into smaller steps and I get my mindset right about it, then the action that then taking the action, you do it with a bigger level of confidence. It's not going to be perfect. You're still going to trip over yourself a little bit. Whatever the fear is, you're going to need to, modify it over time. But action into fear is the really only true antidote. But I did a little work before I got there. And the people that are already part of this One to Grow On community, you've done work already, right? You got clear on your mission, your vision, your principles. We've worked on spending time with, optimistic people who are good influence in your life. We've talked about the power and the courage that it takes to forgive self and forgive others. Those are all steps in advance of taking action into fear, right? And building the courage muscle. That's what we're talking about here. And so, we're living it, right? Now we're living it. We learn it, we live it. What's another example of fear that people have? Fear of missing out, right? And so fear of missing out is another one. And the best antidote I know for that is, again, referring back to another module, mission, vision, principles. The better you understand your purpose, and I know there's seasons and it evolves, but if you understand your purpose and have a vision for your life, and then you have these principles that you live by that are non-negotiable, fear of missing out can be reduced because now I know, I'm going to call it MVP for mission, vision, principles. Now I know the decisions I make, I have a filter for it, right? Is this in alignment with my MVP? Is this in alignment with who I want to be, who I am, who I want to become? And if it's not, then I'm going to say no to it. And the benefit there is there's no, the opportunity cost. Everything we do has an opportunity cost, right? So if I start saying no to things that aren't in alignment here, I'm not allocating time in areas where I shouldn't be. I'm going to have more time for the areas that are in alignment. So therefore my fear of missing out is going to go down because I have more time to spend, right? A lot of us are people pleasers. We say yes to an awful lot of things that we really ought not to be saying yes to. Opportunity cost. That is another module in the One to Grow On community. It's a very important concept to understand, not only financially, but in terms of our greatest asset, which is time. Okay, so fear of missing out. So this is what we do. We figure out the challenge, we study it a little bit, but then we take action on it, right? And you hear me say again, learn it, live it, love it. And so next is, now we're living it, now we're gonna love it. Because what happens is the success, you'll start stacking successes and wins. And then you come back into the community and you say, here's what I did and here's what happened. And we share this information with you. Some of you will even end up in the next edition of the One to Grow On book, right? The One to Grow On book that we're studying here. And some of this content will go back into the community and you'll be an inspiration for others. And remember, we retain and we get better when we learn things and do things, but when we teach them to others and share our successes with others, it actually moves it up in exponential fashion. So that's the love it part. And then finally, the commitment to continuous improvement. I'm not gonna write that whole thing. The commitment to continuous improvement is next. And so when you join the community, this is kind of the formula that we look at together as we move through these things. And then it's about, it's about your dedication and your commitment to taking it on. I will say one thing in terms of fear. One overarching powerful antidote to fear is being passionate about what you do. So whether it's fitness, whether it's your career, whether it's being a family man, whether it's your faith, the more you can identify why you do what you do and bring some passion to the table, the more you're going to move through the fear and be able to conquer it. Because one thing's for sure, I know this, without question, there's going to be pain of discipline and fear and working through that, or at some point there's going to be pain of regretting not doing it. And the pain of the discipline, there's a great article on this, by the way, share it in the community. The pain of the discipline will be felt temporarily, but as you do these things, for me, going back to my contacting expireds example, as I started doing it, I started enjoying it. And pretty soon, I got pretty darn good at it. And then it was like, okay, I need a bigger challenge. It's like I expanded the comfort zone and now I'm knocking it out of the park there. And what's next? I wanted the challenge. I needed bigger challenges. And so that's what this is all about. And then therefore the pain of discipline becomes desire, and the pain of regret, the issue with it is it's in the future. So that's why some people don't make the decision to move through fear into courage and to take on the things that require discipline, because that pain is felt now. Well, the pain of regret is in the future, but you don't want to go there because the pain of regret is tough to get through. The pain of discipline you can get through, and then it turns into a beautiful thing where you're expanding your comfort zone and you're getting better. And again, that's what this is, a personal growth and development journey. I'm committed to this with you. This is not stagnant. This is all, this program is going to evolve and get better over time. And it's going to be a part because of me, part because of you. And we're all going to get, grow together. And I'm super excited about it. And listen, if you're already in, welcome to the program. Thank you for being here. If you're thinking about clicking, you're this far into the video, that means you've seen some value here so far. I would encourage you to click and join. I've de-risked the thing almost completely for you. If you join before March 31st, I'm going to give you half off the first 3 months, but there's no contract. There's no long-term obligation. You can gobble up as much content over a period of time as you want to, and then you can decide, well, this isn't for me. This doesn't really feel right. Cancel anytime. It's okay. This program isn't for everybody, but this program is for people that are willing to dig in, do some self-evaluation, and get to work and take some action. Use the promo code SPRING50, all capital letter. Click the button. Let's get started. Look forward to having you with us.